Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. Military families are not like your traditional family. They are strong, brave, resilient, and some of the most incredible people I know. My name is Gracie, a U.S. Army brat, and I am your host. I am honored to be able to give military family members like myself a place for them to share their stories and experiences in the military life. Stay tuned for this week's guest. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Grace of a Military Child and Life. Today, I'm here with Becca, who is an Army spouse. So, Becca, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So, tell me a little bit what it's like being a military spouse for you.
So I have been a military spouse for just over 5 years. I met my husband 7 years ago, and he is in the Army Reserves. So he is about 15 years in. So I'm fairly new in the realm. I feel fairly new. I learn something new every day. But it's a totally different lifestyle and something that I didn't know about as a child. So we're learning as we go, and as our kids, get bigger, that role, keeps changing, right? And what their needs are versus how much they need my husband as he continues in his career. It seems to just, increase every year. So, but I love learning. I love learning about, the military and the community. And I'm thrilled to be a military spouse. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you had mentioned being a reserve, a spouse, being a reserve family. I was a reserve child, and that's such a different world than being an active duty family. And sometimes it's more of a challenging lifestyle too, I think.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's really hard to make just normal civilians understand some of the challenges. And I think bridging that gap, right, when I talk with my, leadership in my work, or talk with my kids' schools to explain to them what's going on with all of the trips and what that does to our children, explaining that to them so that they can understand the challenges, I think has been really key to continuing, to succeed, in my career or with my kids' schools. And so it's amazing when you get that communication flowing, how helpful everyone can be and how supportive everyone is, even if they're not, familiar with the lifestyle, they still step up and they want to be supportive, which is amazing. But it's walking a fine line. You got your full-time normal, and then you got your, it's a lot. It's a lot.
Right. And, growing up for me, we suburb of Cleveland, Ohio. And even at that point, my dad's unit that he was stationed at, he was attached to, whatever, was 40 minutes away from home. And so, while he didn't need to be there often, he made the commute when necessary. But also we were so distant from that, but we were also so distant. The closest military base was like 4 or 5 hours from us. And so having that distance, like you said, schools don't necessarily understand, on the kids' aspects. It can be hard for work on your aspects to understand of, the lifestyle, because it's not like we're moving around necessarily all the time. We're pretty, stationary in one spot as reserve families, but trainings come up, deployments come up, and a lot of people don't realize how often reserve families experience deployments compared to active duty families, because sometimes it is more often. And so there are so many different aspects to understand of a reserve family. But, we are also still a military family, so we get everything that an active duty family gets and more.
Oh, yeah. So my husband has been, since we've been together, he's been in Chicago stationed. He's been luckily in our backyard for a few years. Of course, that was during the pandemic, so he didn't go in anyway. Right now he's in Richmond, Virginia. So, it's, we're booking the flights for him and the cars and the hotels and making sure he has everything and the travel back and forth. I think on Sunday he got back from Richmond. It actually was Monday morning at 4:30 in the morning.
Wow.
Because of the delays, so it's a challenge, and I definitely feel part of the military community when I talk with people like you, with other, people that I've met, and the support there is unbelievable. But feeling part of the military community when you're not physically on a base, it's different. We know there's support there, we know there's a network there, but tapping into that is a little bit more of a challenge because it's just not right at your doorstep. It's not your neighbors. It's not the where you're working. So it is hard kind of finding those resources. I feel like as part of the reserves.
Yeah, you tend to rely, on your unit so much more that, is kind of your home base. But then again, like you said, your husband was in Chicago. You're not in Chicago. You can't just hop on a flight and go to Chicago. Richmond, like you can't just, it's such a different lifestyle that is so much harder to explain. Military is not just packing you up as a family and moving you to wherever you need to go. That's basically just your husband going. And that's hard on the family.
Yeah, I'm an engineer, so by trade, so numbers are, my thing. And I was getting so frustrated with how much my husband traveled after we had our first baby. And so I went and I added it up. I was like, I wonder how long you've been gone. And he was actually gone 40% of the first year of our son's life.
Wow.
And I couldn't believe it was so much. For us, it's a little different. He's a federal civilian also who works for the Army Reserve. So he gets it both from his normal job and his reserve job. So it's a little bit heavier, but it was a lot. And I was like, I don't know how I can do this and sustain it. It's so much time.
Yeah. And a lot of people, until you sit there and add it up and like physically put pen to paper, do the numbers, do the math, see the numbers, you don't realize how much, your spouse, your loved one is gone and how much, of an impact that is making. And, having both the civilian and the military side of it does not help.
No. All Army all the time. I'm getting real good at those acronyms.
Yeah. And that's such a struggle to understand at the very beginning.
Oh, yeah. And during the pandemic, when most of the travel stopped, my husband was taking the ILE and the AOC classes. So those are several hours, 3 or 4 times a week. It's really a lot, right? And that's not part of their normal work. It's all the things, right? So it's added. And so it's interesting that we saw what that was. Mostly heard him pacing, upstairs in the office on his calls. But seeing the impact of that and seeing the day-to-day, what his work looks like, I think was so interesting for me as a spouse and even for our kids to see, right, what his work entailed. Because like seeing it and being in the room and understanding all of the challenges was so interesting. And I think really changed our perspective on what we're asking from our soldiers and what amazing things that they're doing and how challenging it can be for them. So I think it did change kind of our viewpoint there as well. So it was interesting. It was a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that is, interesting. And it's always great to get the perspective of the whole family. And, it builds a deeper understanding of each other and saying, oh, like I know you're doing so much, but like actually seeing it is so different. And then, also on the spouse side or the kids side, seeing what it's like holding down the house, when your loved one is gone, when your spouse is deployed or, doing all of these incredible things. And it's just having that mutual understanding between everyone in this lifestyle is so important.
Yeah, I didn't really realize, first date, I knew my husband was in the military and I knew all about him. And I think our first date lasted 5 hours. So we got into a lot of topics.
Yeah.
But it's so interesting as you live and breathe it. And especially as, life changes throughout, your time and what your life looks like with all these different stages of life. So it's interesting to see how the military plays a component in all of those stages. And I didn't realize what an impact it would be until we had Hurricane, what was it? Isaac, Ian. I don't know. There's so many, to be honest.
Oh, last year's hurricane.
It was really, really bad. And so we were actually gone from our house for a month. I just got this funny feeling and I, called my husband at work. I said, look, we need to leave. We're taking the kids. We're going. If it's nothing, no big deal. Right.
Right.
So we were gone for a month and he called up a great friend of ours that our kids consider grandparents, and they opened up their house and they said, "We're stocking the fridge. What do you need? Come on over."
Yeah.
And it's, a relationship that was built from a deployment in Afghanistan. They're unbelievably fantastic human beings. I'm really proud to call them my friends. And the fact that they just opened their arms to us without even a thought in their brain, said, "Come immediately. We'll do whatever we need to help." They ended up coming back and helping my husband clean up so the kids didn't have to see, the house, messed up. And I mean, just that without a thought. It's, we're here
Yeah.
for you. We're your family. That sense of community is so different from, I think, what most people experience that don't have something like the military to fall back on. So, it's amazing. I'm truly, every time I meet someone, I'm like, this is so amazing that you're part of this community, and what you're bringing to the table is just, it's mind blowing to me. It's
Yeah.
wonderful.
Yeah. No, I love that. Just sense of community is really what makes the military life so worth it. It's so
Mhm.
like I can't speak highly enough of just the different people and
Mhm.
circumstances like you mentioned during deployments when my dad was deployed in Afghanistan. um he met this man and we were like, all right, well, now we have to pick where we want to settle down. My dad ended up medically retiring, so it was like, well, where do we go? And so my parents posted on Facebook, anybody know anything about Cape Coral, Florida? And one of the guys he was deployed with is like, yeah, that's where I'm from. Like that's where my
Ah,
family is from. And like, it's a big town in Florida and it's growing, but it was that smaller kind of population when we moved here. It's bigger by landmass, but its population was tiny. So it's not somewhere like you would think of in Florida. And so we're like, how crazy is this that we're considering and ended up moving to a place where, they met on deployment to Afghanistan. And, it just brings us together of now we're living in the same city. And,
awesome.
just I can say, hey, I'm coming to this place. Like, who's there? Who can I stay with? Like,
Yeah.
somebody's there. Or, our hurricane evacuation for Hurricane Irma, we went and stayed
Mhm.
with friends we met in the military,
Oh, yeah.
and if we needed to leave Florida and move further north, we had friends in Arkansas that we could stay with. There's places
Mhm.
everywhere where it's like people are there, and even though you may have only known each other for a couple months, couple weeks, like
Mhm.
it's your family.
It's amazing. I mean, I'm so astounded every time I meet someone and interact with someone about how giving everyone is and how supportive everyone is. If you're going through something, they're there,
Yeah,
and we hear about something on the news and we know someone that lives there, we're picking up the phone. What's going on? How can we help? And that just community is something that I didn't expect to find, right, as part of being a military spouse. And so every time I get an interaction, I'm just so, proud to be part of that group, and to hopefully add to that as much as I can.
absolutely. And, talking to people and, not even knowing that they're part of the military community, you can kind of pick out which ones have some sort of tie to the military community because they just have that personality, those characteristics that, fit the mold of being a military family member, whether that be like a spouse, a child, a service
Mhm.
member, you can
It's
really tell.
Well, it's funny at my work. So I work with a lot of people that don't have ties to the military, and I lead a lot of meetings. And I didn't realize how much my vernacular includes very specific military terms until I started hearing them around. And I'm like, that's not normal. That's not normal English. That's definitely a military term. And
Yeah.
so it's funny how they pick up because, I mean, military people know how to get to the point. So
Oh, yeah.
they're
Yeah.
definitely using it. It's funny.
I was talking to someone earlier and it was that, well, how do you deal with, certain situations? And I'm like, honestly, even though I was not a service member myself, uh, you know, I still have those traits in me
Oh,
because,
yeah.
you have that, well, task A, B, and C need to get done. Like we're going to get them done no matter what it takes. And so you just have these characteristics and these little traits that you pick up on, even if it's just as something as simple as like literally getting up and making your bed every day, or and having that discipline,
Oh
to
yeah.
carry out through your day and your lifestyle. It speaks volume of how our service members are trained, but then
Mm.
also how it feeds down into their families.
Oh yeah. It's so cute to see like my kids, they'll practice marching around the house or,
Oh,
they're real specific on the things I do. And I'm like, that's adorable.
yeah. I remember we'd be walking through the stores, and my dad would be like, all right, pivot. And so we'd like, we didn't know how to pivot at like 7 something years old, but we
Right.
would do our best to do a little pivot to turn, or just little things like that. And from a kid aspect, like it's fun,
Hmm.
and we love to do those kinds of things. And we see these men and women as heroes, and they're literally, superheroes,
Hmm.
especially in kids' eyes. And so
Oh yeah.
in any sense of being like them, it's something that every kid, I think, aspires to be.
Oh yeah. My husband, I know when my son was born, he didn't know any nursery rhymes. We just didn't know. That wasn't something, what he knew was army cadences. And our child did not sleep. So he walked up and down the hospital for days singing army cadences, which
Oh
are
my
not
gosh.
necessarily
They are
nursery rhyme
not friend.
specific.
No, they are not kid friendly, really.
No, and it's so funny. So all the nurses remember him that 2 years later, we were in the same hospital, to have my daughter. They remembered him. They're like, "Oh, yep,
Yeah.
we got you," because he was up and down, walking, singing cadences back and forth. Is so funny, and it's just such a unique thing. That's like a memory for me that I'm like, "Oh, yep, Army cadences. Now we know them.
Yep.
They're real specific."
It's actually funny. My sister, when we would drive through basic training, we called it like private land, basic training land, of Post in San Antonio. And so we would drive through that area, and all the privates would be out there marching and singing along, to their
Yeah.
cadences. And my sister, like 8 years old, 9, 10, would be so excited. And we would roll down all the windows and we would listen
Oh.
to them marching along to their cadence. And then she would
Mhm.
go to sleep to listening to cadence music. Like that's what she wanted
Uh-huh.
to listen to. And even like now, Jonathan Michael Fleming, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's like taken a lot of the cadences and has remixed them a little bit into rock songs, which is
Cool.
really, really cool. And he's just recorded a lot of them, and I've been listening to them when I drive.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean,
so
they're
like
catchy.
they are. I roll the window
Mhm.
down and I'm just driving along, singing along to this cadence. And he's got a lot of the traditional ones on there of
Mhm.
just, no music in the background, just his voice going back and
Cool.
forth. And, still me and my sister, are in the car singing along to cadence. And
That's
it's
amazing.
it's incredible how like focused I stay when I'm driving.
It really
So
does. It keeps the
yeah,
beat.
yeah.
Yeah.
So even little things like that, like, your kid's gonna grow up knowing cadence now, even though they're not the most
Uh-huh.
appropriate, things
Oh
to be
yeah.
singing along to.
Our 2-year-old asked for them. She's like, that's her nursery rhymes. I'm like, okay, here we go. In your little 2-year-old voice.
Oh my gosh, that's so adorable though.
It's
I
really
I
cute.
love that. And those are things that they're gonna remember forever.
Oh yeah.
And they have like the strongest impact.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so you're an author as well. So tell me about that journey.
Yeah, so that was never something I wanted to do, to be honest. I never saw myself in the writing work, realm. I'm an engineer, numbers are my
Yes.
thing. Got it. Writing, not so much. But after the pandemic, when my husband started traveling again, we had an almost 2-year-old, and his world was rocked because he didn't have 24/7 access to us. So, I looked around, I listened to a bunch of, parenting podcasts, like how do I help him prepare for what's going on? My world was rocked. I missed my husband, and that's something that I didn't have to do for a few years. And so all of a sudden, there was a lot of emotions going on in that house, and I needed
Right.
something to help him. So I tried to find books that would help prep him and get him ready. And there wasn't really anything for frequent short travels. And so
Right.
I decided, if I can't find what I need, I'm going to write it.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
so I stayed up all night one night and wrote a book, and I illustrated it on printer paper, and I started reading it to my child. And it was night and day, the difference. I mean,
Yeah.
he had what he needed. He asked for the book. He wanted me to read it to him over and over again. And I started talking to my friends who have husbands who travel for different careers, not military. And they're like, well, we need something like
Right.
that too. So I took the classes, I did all the things, submitted the manuscripts, got my publisher. It ended up being a very long journey with lots of hours to do it. But I'm really proud of my book, and I know how much it helped my family. I mean, we read it every time he leaves, every night. It goes in the school bag with them, per the teacher's requests. It's a tool that we really needed to express to our kids what was going on, that it's normal to feel these things, and that no matter what, you're loved. And we just needed them to really understand that. So for them, it's that physical thing that they can hold, they can hear the message, it's reassuring to them. And it helps me too, because it gives a way for me to bring my family who's like feeling all of these emotions all together for a quiet moment and say, look, we're all here together. We're family. We're going to get through it. You're loved no matter what, we've got it. And so that's kind of how got to the point of becoming an author. It was a long road.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so important to be able to not only say, you're loved, or, you're appreciated, and, those words, but it's something different to have something physical that you can hold, and, with a
Yeah.
story that's being told,
Yeah.
especially to help others understand, what the military life is like, and, you know, the difference of the reserve family, where they're gone so frequently for short
Mhm.
periods of time, but still so frequently.
Yeah, and it surprised me, the reaction, and I didn't anticipate this because it's how I live, right? I know that he's gonna be gone this much, but I don't even think even my close friends realized it. So when I started going and my friends would read the book and use it with their kids, and I'd read at schools, I wasn't expecting so many adults to just break down into tears.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, it's just how we live. And I don't think they realize the true impact, because you see, a smiling face, you're going about your day and you're working through it. But I don't think that they realize every single trip, how much it affects. You might be used to the fact that it keeps happening, but it affects you just as much each time.
Right.
And even as an adult, right? So how hard is it for adults to cope? Now think of the kids, right? Who can't even control their emotions normally, like a yogurt spills and the world's on fire.
Yeah.
So imagine, when one of your favorite people's gone. And so
Yeah.
I think that it really was able to bring kind of the realities to a lot of people in a way that they could understand. And so I'm really proud of it. I've talked with a lot of military families who use it. It's now, one of those things that it's just part of their normal trips. And I'm really proud that I can, help in even a little small way, kind of bring the message.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's so important to share that message to military families, to civilian families, to, even get a glimpse into someone's lifestyle. And, when I was growing up and I was 9 and my dad was going on his first deployment, that I could remember, I was a deployment baby. But still, going on that first deployment, it was huge. And so,
Hmm.
I, had the conversation with my mom the other day. There were barely any kids' books for military
Yeah,
kids when I was 9, and that was about 12 years ago now. And so yes, a lot of time has gone by, but still, basically our books were, here's your military ABCs, or here's
yeah,
like, just something so simple like that. There was nothing where, I could picture myself being the main character of a book and saying, oh, my dad's going away,
hmm,
I'm not alone, or something along those lines. It was all kind of just standard stuff. And now there's
yeah.
so many different books out there
I know, it's
saying,
amazing.
here is exactly um, a character who's going through something similar to you.
Oh yeah,
Or I love Terry Weber, her books that
Yeah.
she has of day in the life of a plane. And,
Hmm.
my dad flies planes, my mom flies planes. Here's what they do all day. This is what
Yeah.
what they're doing. And so just so many different creative minds like yourself coming together and putting together just a piece of writing for kids to be able to say, this is what I go through. And,
Hmm.
even to bring to schools and for
Hmm.
kids to show their friends and say, hey, you might not be a military kid, but this is a little glimpse into my life, because they're probably going to understand more from a book
Oh
what,
yeah.
the life of a military kid is, rather than somebody telling them,
Right.
because it's just that, like, uh the wires in a child's brain is so
Oh yeah.
different than
Oh yeah.
a teenager. And so it's just so impactful to see the difference that has come within the last decade of, you know helping these kids get through this tough lifestyle.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, the military, the military spouses especially that have been writing, books and resources for the kids have been such a difference for us. Just, easy things like when we have a trip coming and it's going to be a longer one and kids don't understand time. And
Hmm.
so a visual way to represent time. So we'll put, paper links together and you take off a link every day so they can see it. So they're not asking how long, how long, how long.
Right.
You can go to that, we have countdowns, we have timers, things like that, ways that they can physically see time passing. And there's all these resources now. That's so amazing that everyone's getting together and be like, look, we're all collectively going through this. What are ways that we can help our kids? Books are a really great one. Tools like that, the right ways that you talk about it so that they understand. I think social media and just podcasts, things like this that get information out into people's hands is so amazing because you can see when you put out collectively all of this amazing intelligence and resources and all of the things together, like where our society is going, I think is pretty exciting because we're all asking the same questions. How do we do the best in this arena or that arena? And so when we can bring everyone's voice to the table, I think that, it's amazing what we can all do together. So I've been thrilled with the military spouse community that I've really been getting to know, through this book and the publishing of it, and I've learned so much from all
Yeah.
these, people who've gone through it.
Right. And just when you get so many people involved, there's ultimately going to be conflict. It's unavoidable, but there's
Always.
so many creative ideas out there. And,
Mhm.
some people think of other things that you may never have thought of, and vice versa. And you put your minds together, and beautiful pieces of art, beautiful ideas come to play. And
Mhm.
in the end, we're all here to support each other, and we're all here to get through this lifestyle together, because it's not easy, and you have to have that team element, or you're going to struggle so much more. And I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about earlier, of finding community and
Mhm.
being so in tune with the military lifestyle and what you're going through, what your spouse is going through, what your kids are going through, and just, living day by day and living in the moment.
Oh yeah. I love it. I didn't know how much of an impact being part of the military community would have just in every aspect of our lives. So I'm really proud that I can, say that I'm a military spouse, and I'm so proud of my husband for what he does day in and day out. I mean, it's the hardest working man I know. So not only does he work so hard for the country, but he works so hard for our family. So I'm very lucky and very blessed that I can have this role in life. So
Absolutely. And the last thing I want to ask is, what piece of advice would you give to another military spouse?
I would say take a breath because no matter how much you plan, no matter how prepared you think you are, they're going to throw a curveball at you every time. And so I would just say always try to approach as calmly as you can, because everyone's trying to do the best that they can. And so it's amazing if you just take a pause before you react, I think how much better you can get, to a resolution for whatever it is. So if you go together as a team, you're going to get there. It takes time. It's a lot of learning, but it's doable, and it's amazing what you can do together. And, tap into those resources, ask for help. Someone knows what you're going through in some form or fashion, and you reach out. It's amazing what you'll get back. So I would say, take it one step at a time.
Yes.
And you can get there, and it's amazing what you can get to together. So
absolutely. Yeah, I love that. And where can listeners find your books and connect with you?
Yeah, so let's see. There it is.
Oh,
There's my book.
That.
Yeah, so that's our family. We're on there. See, this is us on the back.
I love that.
So it's for sale at beccajohnzbooks.com. And it's also for sale at all the big retailers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all of that. And then I'm on Instagram, and I have a blog post to try to help, just try to share the things that I've learned, going through it as much as I can.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Becca, so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to Grace of a Military Child and Life podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to give it a like, follow, and comment. Also, be sure to check out Instagram and Facebook at Grace of a Military Child and Life for more awesome content. For information on the podcast, Military Child Bigs and Littles, Go AMCL blog, or other resources, visit www.goamcl.org. You can also email me at Gracie, that's Gracie @goamcl.org, with any questions or comments. To be a guest on the podcast, you can schedule it at www.goamcl.org/schedule a podcast, all one word, or contact me via social media or email. Stay tuned for the next episode where another incredible story is shared.